Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, picture this. You're dropped into the heart of a Japanese megacity, skyscrapers scraping the clouds, neon signs just blinding you, this incredible chaotic energy, and you have absolutely no idea where you are. Chances are you're thinking of Shinjuku.
Oh, without a doubt. Shinjuku really is the titan, isn't it? Economically, transit-wise. I mean, we're talking the world's busiest station complex. If you add up all the little stations around it, it's something like, what, 4.2 million people a day? It's just staggering.
It's mind-boggling. But here's the thing we really want to dig into today, the twist. What if I told you that this hyper-modern, totally overwhelming place basically exists because of, well, a few strange accidents, some pretty spectacular failures, and one incredibly determined horse?
Yeah, the horse is key. So our mission today is to really trace Shinjuku's story from its kind of humble, often forgotten beginnings back in the Edo period, right up to the complex, sometimes gritty social stuff happening today.
We're going deep on how the station area became this chaotic giant, and the crazy origin story of Kabukicho, named for a theater they never even built.
Exactly. And Golden Guy, too. That little pocket of the past. How did that survive? We want to unpack all those aha moments.
Shinjuku is one of Tokyo's big three sub-centers, sure, but its sheer complexity, this kind of patchwork quilt of a place, it only really clicks when you realize every single street, every skyscraper, every tiny hidden bar, it's all got layers of history going back centuries. So let's start at the beginning. Who actually laid the groundwork? Okay, so when you look at Shinjuku today, it's all, glass and steel, but the name itself, Shinjuku, it actually goes way back. We're talking samurai, right?
Oh, absolutely. Way back. I think 1590. That's before Tokugawa Ieyasu even properly set up shop in Edo. He was just moving in.
Right, so pre-Edo, essentially. And there's this key figure, Naito Kiyanari.
Exactly. He was one of Ieyasu's guys, a trusted retainer. And Ieyasu basically needed him to, well, secure the western flank, you could say. Keep an eye on any Hujik clan remnants hanging around after their defeat.
And the way he got the land, it sounds less like a property deal and more like something out of an old legend.
It really does. The story goes, Ieyasu offered Naito Kiyanari the area a horse can gallop around in one breath. Kind of a grand gesture, right? The idea is probably just to give him a decent-sized plot for a secondary residence.
But Naito, he seems to have taken that challenge very, very seriously. He didn't just go for a little trot around the block.
No way, he pushed it. This horse apparently just went flat out, galloped nonstop, marking out boundaries that stretched from modern-day Yotsuya way over in the east, clear across to Yoyogi in the west.
Wow.
South down towards Sendagaya, north up to Hyukubo. I mean, it covered a huge chunk of what's now central Tokyo, an absolutely massive area.
In the end of that ride, it really hammers home just how much effort went into it.
Yeah, it's kind of tragic, actually. The sources all say that after this incredible feat, covering miles and miles, the horse just collapsed, died from exhaustion right there.
Jeez.
So this enormous piece of land, claimed by the, ultimate sacrifice of this horse, became Naito Kiyanari's secondary estate. And that land, centuries later, that's Shinjuku Gyoen, the big park.
So the park itself is basically a monument to that horse and Naito's ambition. Incredible. But
right.
Okay, this massive estate, it still wasn't Shinjuku the new inn yet.
Not yet, no. For quite a while, the Naito place was just a huge private property. The name Shinjuku, which literally means new inn, came about because there was a real practical problem for people traveling on the Kushukaido.
That's the main road heading west out of Edo towards Kufu.
Right. And the problem was the first official post station or inn in town called Tokaido was just too far from Edo Castle. It made for a really long, tough first day's journey, especially if you were hauling goods or, officials doing the required travel.
Made sense to have something closer.
Exactly. So fast forward to 1698.
Okay, this is the Jinroku era, remember. A time known for, well, culture flourishing, but also a bit of hedonism creeping into Edo life. Anyway, some locals saw an opportunity with all that traffic on the Kushukaido. They got together and petitioned the government, the shogunate, to let them set up a new post station.
And they put up serious money for it, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, a massive amount, something like 5,600 risho, just an enormous sum back then. And they carved out a piece of the Naito estate land to do it.
And because it was the new in Shinjuku on Naito's land,
sure,
we get Naito Shinjuku.
That's exactly where the name comes from, the one we still use. And this new in town, it just exploded. It was perfectly placed. It quickly became one of Edo's official 4 inns, the Yotsushuku, along with Shinagawa, Itabashi, and Senju. It wasn't just for long-distance travelers either. It turned into a super popular spot for people from Edo to take day trips, get out of the crowded city.
Right, and when a place becomes a popular day trip destination, especially back then, it usually develops a certain kind of, let's say, lively reputation. It absolutely did, right from the start. Naito Shinjuku wasn't just known for its inns and tea houses. It quickly got famous for its unofficial brothel districts, the Okabasho. That sort of licentious vibe was baked in from the beginning.
There was that amazing satirical poem you mentioned. It really paints a picture.
Doesn't it? How sweet to see irises bloom among the horse droppings of Yotsuya Shinjuku. It's so vivid. The horse droppings just tell you how incredibly busy the road was, constant traffic, and the irises. Everyone knew that was a poetic way of referring to the licensed women working there. The whole place thrived on that mix of travel, trade, and, well, pleasure.
And the fact that the authorities actually shut it down for a while just proves how vibrant it must have been. Maybe too vibrant for their liking.
It definitely confirms it was booming. They did temporarily close it down in 1718 over moral concerns, but the pull, the economic draw, was just too strong. It was eventually revived around 1772. And this pattern, Shinjuku thriving on that edge, maybe slightly outside the rules, attracting people looking for entertainment away from the stricter city center. That's kind of the DNA you still see today in places like Kabukicho or Shinjuku Nicho.
Okay, let's jump way ahead now. Meiji Restoration happens, the samurai era ends. What happens to the Naitu land?
Well, the Naicho family loses its status, the estate loses its purpose, the whole area became pretty desolate for a while. Eventually, the government, the Ministry of Finance, bought the land. They used it for agricultural experiments for a bit, and then finally, in 1879, it was established as the public garden Shinjuku Gyoen. The old inn-town itself kind of faded in importance as Tokyo started to modernize.
And then the railway arrives, 1885. But you said this was kind of a false start. It's almost impossible now to imagine Shinjuku Station being some tiny, isolated stop out on the sticks.
It's totally counterintuitive today, but you have to understand the politics back then. When the Nippon Railway planned the Yamate Line, which eventually became the Yamano Line, we know the established business centers in Tokyo, like Ginza or Ueno, they absolutely freaked out.
They didn't want the competition.
They didn't want this noisy, disruptive new technology messing up their established trade. So they lobbied hard and basically forced the railway company to build the station way out on the western edge of the city. It was practically countryside then, an area called Tsunohazu.
Just farmland and maybe a few houses.
Pretty much. The station was so insignificant when it opened, sources say it only handled maybe 50 passengers a day. 50. It wasn't a hub, it was just a stop. Out in the middle of nowhere, really. But that seemingly random, inconvenient location, that set the stage completely accidentally for Shinjuku's massive explosion decades later.
Right, so Shinjuku's fate changes dramatically and tragically because of one massive event. The Great Kanto earthquake in 1923. There's a real sort of geological irony here.
It really is. See, Shinjuku happens to sit on the Musashino Plateau. Geographically, it's really solid, stable ground. But downtown Tokyo, places like Ginza, Asakusa, the older merchant areas, a lot of that was built on much weaker ground, sometimes even reclaimed land, low-lying areas.
So when the massive earthquake hit, followed by those devastating fires,
those low-lying areas were just flattened, complete devastation. But Shinjuku, because it was on that stronger plateau, it suffered relatively minimal structural damage. It basically stood firm while the rest of the city center was burning and collapsing. That was a huge advantage.
So it wasn't just that the building survived, it actually triggered a huge movement of people.
Oh, absolutely. A massive migration. People fled the destroyed eastern districts, the old Low City, desperate for safety and just somewhere to live. They poured into the western suburbs, which were largely undamaged. And suddenly, Shinjuku Station, that previously ignored little stop out west,
became absolutely critical.
It became the lifeline because the Choops line, well, its predecessor, the Kubu Railway, which had actually reached Shinjuku back in 1889, that was pretty much the only major train line at the time that could get people directly from those booming western suburbs back into what was left of the functional city center, without needing complicated transfers through the destroyed areas.
So all the commuter traffic just funneled right into Shinjuku.
Overwhelmingly. It went from being this quiet 50-passenger-a-day stop to an absolutely essential, massively congested transit hub almost overnight. purely by accident of geography and disaster.
And this accidental importance, this sudden centrality, that's what kicked off Shinjuku's first real golden age, right? Mostly around the east exit.
Yeah, it was this incredibly rapid commercial boom. Shinjuku suddenly became the place to be for shopping, for entertainment, for this new growing population in Western Tokyo. And that's when we see some of the iconic businesses, the ones we still know today, getting established.
The big department stores that still dominate the east exit.
Yeah, exactly. Like Isetan, it opened its big store there in 1933, and boom, it instantly anchored Shinjuku as this high-end shopping destination. I mean, even now, Isetan Shinjuku makes more money than any other single department store in Japan.
Wow.
And it wasn't just Isetan. You had places like Nakamura-ya, famous for making curry popular in Tokyo, and Takano, the fancy fruit parlor. They all set up shop, cementing Shinjuku's image as this place for, sophisticated city life, good food, culture.
The descriptions from that time sound like pure energy.
Totally electric. There's this quote from around 1930 describing the scene outside the station.
Yeah.
Just waves of people pouring out. The main street, Shinjuku-dori, was packed solid with streetcars, cars, buses, bicycles, just moving without a moment's gap from early morning until late at night. It was buzzing.
And it wasn't just shopping, it was culture, too. Theaters, cinemas.
Big time. It became a real cultural center. You had famous cinemas like the Musashino-kan, theaters like the Moulin Rouge Shinjukuza. It was catering to this new middle-class audience that had moved west.
But then, history kind of repeats itself, doesn't it? World War II and the air raids hit Shinjuku hard, too.
They did. The Tokyo air raids caused huge destruction across the city, including Shinjuku. But again, maybe because the population wasn't quite as densely packed as the old downtown areas, the loss of life, while terrible, was comparatively lower in Shinjuku, which meant maybe it could bounce back a bit quicker, though the immediate aftermath was pure chaos.
And chaos, especially post-war chaos, inevitably leads to black markets, the yamaichi.
Absolutely essential for survival back then. Poverty, massive shortages of everything.
Yeah.
These black markets just sprang up literally overnight. People built makeshift stalls, shacks, right in the bombed-out ruins near the station.
And these weren't just random collections of stalls, were they? They were often pretty organized, sometimes by less than savory groups.
Oh yeah, highly organized, often controlled. You had big operations like the Shinjuku market, which was notoriously run by a powerful Yakuza group, the Kantu Ozugumi. They controlled the flow of everything: scarce food, clothes, medicine, booze, smuggled American cigarettes, you name it.
It's incredible to think that two of Shinjuku's most unique atmospheric areas today actually grew directly out of those desperate, chaotic black market stalls.
The yamaichi really left their mark. Over by the west exit, the remnants of those market stalls eventually morphed into what's now Omoi Ryukocho Memory Lane, those narrow, smoky alleys packed with tiny eateries. And crucially, over on the east side, the stalls that sprang up there, those were the direct ancestors, the seeds of what would eventually become Shinjuku Golden Gai, that cluster of tiny bars.
The government did eventually clear out the main yamaichi around 1950, right?
They did. There was a big crackdown, but the spirit was already out there. The shopkeepers, the businesses, they didn't just disappear, they relocated, they rebuilt nearby. Shinjuku's energy for commerce and entertainment was just too strong to suppress. And that crackdown, that dispersal, actually helped set the stage for the next major and maybe most famous post-war development. The planning, or maybe the misplanning, of Kabukicho.
Okay, Kabukicho. The sleepless town, Asia's biggest entertainment district. Its origin story is just one of the great ironies of city planning, isn't it? It was meant to be something completely different, something moral.
The contrast is unbelievable, yeah.
Yeah.
The name, Kabukicho, was officially given in 1948, and it came from this incredibly ambitious, almost utopian post-war reconstruction plan. It wasn't supposed to be the chaotic, neon-drenched place we know at all.
So who was behind this grand, idealistic vision?
Well, the key figures were a town planner named Ishikawa Aiju, and maybe more importantly, this really energetic local community leader, Suzuki Kihi. They were looking at the rubble, the devastation after the war, and they had this big idea.
Which was?
The core idea was to build a huge, magnificent kabuki theater, the Kabuki Enbuju, right in the middle of the area.
Oh.
This theater was meant to be the anchor for what they called an idealistic cultural facility for the whole nation.
And they actually used the phrase moral entertainment district, Dukateki Hankagai. That just sounds completely bizarre today, given Kabukicho's reputation.
It really speaks volumes about the post-war mood, doesn't it? That mix of desperation and high hopes. Suzuki Kihi genuinely believed that for Japan to recover its dignity and status after the defeat, it needed to become a tourism nation, attract foreign visitors, foreign money, by showcasing high culture. The plan wasn't just the Kabuki theater, it included other theaters, opera houses, classy dance halls.
Okay, so what went wrong? Why is there no giant Kabuki theater dominating the area today? Why did the plan basically fail to deliver its main promise?
Well, fundamentally, it came down to money and materials. In those immediate post-war years, everything was scarce. Building materials were hard to come by, funding was unstable. Constructing this massive, state-of-the-art Kabuki theater kept getting pushed back. It was repeatedly labeled a non-urgent project.
This just sort of fizzled out.
Pretty much. The momentum was lost, the funding never fully materialized, and eventually, the plan to build the Kabuki theater itself was just quietly dropped. It never happened.
Not the name stuck.
Yeah.
Kabukicho. Named after a theater that was never built. That's the central irony, the real aha moment here.
Exactly. The name is basically a permanent monument to this incredibly ambitious, idealistic dream that just didn't pan out. They fixed the name in 1948, and then the neighborhood just evolved into something totally different, driven by commerce and entertainment, not high culture.
And before all this planning, before the war, what was this area actually like? It wasn't always a central spot, was it?
Oh, not at all. The area was generally known as Tsunohazu. And before it was even residential, parts of it were basically marshland, swampy. There was actually a small river, the Kanigawa or Crab River, that ran right through it, roughly where Hanamidori Street is now. It took a lot of landfill and drainage work over time to make it buildable.
And there's another historical layer, too, from the Edo period, something about guards.
Yeah, that's right. Part of the area was used as training grounds for the Haikunen Gumi. That translates to the 100-man rifle corps. They were samurai guards tasked with protecting the western approaches to Edo Castle. Actually, the nearby neighborhood name Haikunen-cho comes directly from them. So this land went from being kind of quiet, semi-swampy, military-adjacent land to, well, the ultimate entertainment maze.
Okay, let's talk about the maze aspect, because even though the cultural plan failed, Suzuki Kihi, the community leader, he pivoted, right? He focused on the urban design, and he was apparently quite clever about maximizing the area's energy.
He really was. Once it was clear the big theater wasn't happening soon, he focused on making the district commercially successful. And his key strategy was in the street layout. He deliberately designed Kabukicho with a huge number of T-junctions.
T-junctions. Okay, how does that work? Why is that significant?
It has a powerful psychological effect. Think about a normal grid street plan. You can usually see quite far down the street, right? You can see what's ahead, decide if you want to go that way.
Yeah, makes sense.
But with a T-junction, your view is blocked. The street ends, and you have to turn left or right. You can't see what's around the corner.
Ah, so it creates mystery. It makes you want to see what's hidden.
Precisely. It constantly piques your curiosity. It makes you want to turn the corner, explore deeper, see what's down that alley or that street. This maze-like design naturally draws people further and further into the district. It encourages wandering, keeps foot traffic flowing, which is obviously great for all the bars, restaurants, clubs, and shops lining those streets. It literally pulls you in.
And what about all those super narrow alleys you see cutting between the buildings? They look almost like accidental gaps, but were they planned too?
Surprisingly, yes. They were part of the design known as service yards, and they had a very practical purpose, especially back then when many buildings were wooden and fire was a constant danger in Tokyo.
Ah, fire safety.
Exactly. These narrow alleys provided quick access routes for firefighters to get into the dense blocks, to tackle fires more easily and hopefully prevent them from spreading block to block. So even the seemingly chaotic bits had some thought behind them.
Okay, so the Kabuki Theater failed, but Suzuki did manage to land a major entertainment venue eventually, right? The Koma Theater.
Yes, that was a big win for him. He persuaded the Tush Company, the big film studio, to build the Shinjuku Koma Theater. It opened in 1956, and it was huge, seated over 2,000 people. For decades, it really was the landmark, the symbolic heart of Kabukicho.
Famous for enka music shows.
Absolutely. It became known as the Hall of Enka, hosted massive concerts, big variety shows, even the famous New Year's Eve TV show, Kushaku Utagassen, one year.
And the name Koma.
Koma means a spinning top. It was named after its really advanced stage mechanism. It had this cool 3-tiered rotating stage, very high-tech for its time.
A real icon, but it's gone now too.
Yeah, sadly. It got old, closed down in 2008. And the site was redeveloped, eventually becoming the Shinjuku Chush building, which opened in 2015, which is now, of course, famous worldwide for having that giant Godzilla head peering over the edge. Maybe, in a way, a more fitting symbol for today's Kabukicho than a spinning stage ever was.
Okay, so if Kabukicho is the result of a grand plan that went sideways, then Shinjuku Golden Gai, just a stone's throw away, feels like an accident that somehow survived. It's this tiny preserved slice of old Tokyo, isn't it? These narrow alleys, low-rise wooden buildings crammed together, housing something like 280 tiny bars. It's completely different from the skyscrapers all around it.
It's totally unique, a real anomaly. And it survived mostly through, well, sheer stubbornness and the community organizing itself. Its whole layout and atmosphere are deeply rooted in those post-war black markets, the yamaichi. But the actual formation of Golden Gai, as we know it, is a bit more complex. It happened right after the main markets were cleared out.
The sources talk about two different groups of people sort of converging on this one spot, Kabukicho One-Combe, and setting up shop.
That's right. It wasn't just one group. First, you had stall owners from the original Watagumi market, the big one near Shinjuku Station that got shut down. They needed somewhere to go, so a bunch of them relocated to the northern side of what's now Golden Gai. They formed one of the key associations there.
Okay, that's one stream.
The second stream came from the other direction, sort of. It was made up of lots of small stalls and maybe temporary structures that had clustered around the Shinjuku Nikkome area, which itself had a history as a red light district. When things got reorganized, they moved over to the southern side of the Golden Gai area, the Hanasono-gai part, and formed their own association.
Wow, so you had this mix of like black market veterans and maybe people displaced from the red light trade all crammed into this one little block. That must have set the stage for its more notorious early phase, the Blue Line era.
That's exactly what happened. This is a really important bit of its history. When these tiny shops first set up in this area, which was then called Sankucho, it was still a bit off the beaten path, away from the main station bustle. And a lot of these places, maybe they looked like tiny bars or food stalls on the outside, but they were actually involved in, well, unauthorized prostitution.
Unauthorized, meaning illegal, basically.
Right. Tokyo had its official government-sanctioned red light zones, which were known colloquially as akasen, literally red lines on the maps. Because this area in Sankucho was operating completely outside that system, totally unsanctioned, underground, it got the nickname Aosen, the Blue Line area. For a while, it was one of the city's biggest hubs for this kind of illicit activity.
That secrecy, that kind of hidden underground feel must have really shaped the place back then, until the law changed everything.
It defined its early identity. But the Eisen era came to a very abrupt end in 1958. That's when Japan enacted the National Prostitution Prevention Law. Suddenly, all these businesses operating as fronts had to stop their main activity. They were forced to convert, pretty much overnight, into legitimate drinking establishments, the tiny bars and pubs that Golden Gai is famous for today. That forced conversion is really the birth of Golden Gai as we know it, this incredibly dense district of miniature bars.
What's amazing is how quickly it seemed to pivot.
Yeah.
It went from being this, illicit blue line zone to becoming this super cool intellectual hub for Tokyo's counterculture.
The transformation in the 60s and 70s is remarkable. That became Golden Gai's cultural golden age. It somehow turned into the absolute epicenter for Tokyo's Angura scene, the underground arts movement. And the tiny size of the bars was key.
How so?
Well, most of these places are incredibly small, right? Maybe only big enough for 5 or 6 customers, sometimes fewer. Only 9 to 15 square meters. This created this really intense, intimate atmosphere. It felt private, anonymous. You could have intense conversations without the whole world listening in.
So these tiny bars basically became unofficial salons, the famous Bunden bars, literary bars.
Exactly. They were the default hangouts, the debating chambers, the late-night offices for writers, poets, journalists, radical filmmakers, avant-garde theater directors, photographers, anyone involved in challenging the mainstream. It was a necessary space for free thought, for dissent, for hatching creative, often provocative projects away from the more conservative mainstream establishments. Arguments were common, collaborations were born there.
And its connection to the arts wasn't just literature, it was film too.
Oh yeah, very strongly. Golden Gai was deeply connected to the rise of independent Japanese cinema in that era, especially the Art Theater Guild, or ATG. ATG was crucial in supporting experimental, often politically charged films from the 60s onwards, and the bars in Golden Gai were where these filmmakers, critics, and actors would meet, argue, plan their next low-budget masterpiece. It really cemented its reputation as this hub for cultural rebellion.
And that whole bohemian intellectual vibe got a massive boost in 1976, didn't it? With that amazing literary prize double win.
Oh, that was huge. A major cultural moment for the area. Two writers who were absolute fixtures in the Golden Gai bars, just total regulars, Kenji Nakagami and Rizu Saki. They won Japan's two most prestigious literary awards, the Akutagawa Prize and the Naoki Prize, in the same year.
Wow, that must have put Golden Gai firmly on the cultural map for everyone.
Absolutely. It solidified this idea that, having your regular spot, your favorite tiny bar in Golden Gai, was almost essential if you wanted to be considered a serious cultural figure in Tokyo. It became synonymous with this authentic, gritty, intellectual cool.
But then came the bubble economy in the late 80s. And despite its cultural cachet, Golden Gai's ramshackle buildings on prime real estate made it a huge target, right?
It was facing extinction. This was its biggest fight for survival. The land prices were going insane, and the whole area became ground zero for the Jiageya, those aggressive land sharks, the speculators who specialized in forcing small landowners out so they could consolidate plots for big redevelopment projects. They saw these little wooden buildings as just obstacles to massive profits.
But the bar owners didn't just roll over, they fought back. Collectively.
Their resistance was incredible. They banded together, formed the Shinjuku Hanazono Golden Gai Mamorukai, the Association to Protect Golden Gai, and they were smart about it. They didn't just resist legally. They used very public, community-focused tactics.
Like making mochi.
Yeah. They held traditional mochitsuki rice-pounding ceremonies right there in the narrow alleys. It was a brilliant move, partly fundraising by selling the mochi, but mostly it was a very visible way to say, we're still here, we're a living community, we're energetic, and we're not leaving. It generated a lot of public sympathy.
Did it work?
Largely, yes. It was tough. Some businesses were forced out, and there was apparently a period in the early 90s, after the bubble burst, where parts of Golden Gai felt a bit like a ghost town. But the core community held on. That unity, combined with later infrastructure improvements, getting proper utilities, things like that, allowed it to survive and eventually revive. Now it's attracting younger bar owners, and it's not just a local treasure, it's a global tourist spot, even recognized by the Michelin Green Guide. It's an amazing story of resilience.
So we've journeyed from that exhausted horse, through earthquakes and black markets, failed dreams and tiny bars. Which brings us to the Shinjuku we see today. This absolute behemoth, which really feels like two different cities sliced in half by the train tracks.
That east-west divide is so stark, isn't it? The east exit is still pretty much what it became after the war. Japan's biggest playground for shopping and entertainment. You've got the powerhouse department stores like Isetan, the sheer density and chaos of Kabukicho, and then Shinjuku Nichome, right there, the largest LGBTQ+ district in Asia. It's all about consumption, nightlife, energy.
And then you cross the tracks, maybe get lost in the station for an hour.
Yeah.
And you emerge into the west exit, Nishi Shinjuku, and it's just completely different. Corporate Tokyo, all skyscrapers and government buildings. It's hard to believe that whole side was basically empty land until relatively recently.
It really was, almost undeveloped until the mid-1960s. The big catalyst for the West Side's transformation was the closure of the Yutabashi water purification plant in 1965. Suddenly, this absolutely enormous plot of centrally located land became available, like the size of a small town right next to the station.
Perfect for a massive planned development, the birth of the Shinjuku subcenter, the Shintushin.
Exactly. It was a very deliberate government-led plan to create a modern high-rise business district, moving some of the corporate concentration away from the overcrowded historical centers like Marunouchi. And that's when the skyscrapers started shooting up, beginning with the Keio Plaza Hotel in 1971. Many of those early buildings were pioneering feats of engineering for earthquake resistance in tall structures.
But the real stamp of authority, the thing that cemented Nishi Shinjuku's status, came much later, didn't it?
Yeah, the game changer was in 1991. That's when the Tokyo Metropolitan Government moved its headquarters, that huge, iconic, twin-towered building designed by Kenzo Tange, from Marunouchi all the way over to Nishi Shinjuku.
That wasn't just moving offices, that was a statement.
It was a massive statement. It officially shifted the administrative center of Tokyo westward and cemented Nishi Shinjuku's role as the city's single biggest concentration of office space. It completely redefined the skyline and the power dynamics of Tokyo's centers.
Okay, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or rather, the giant maze under the room. Shinjuku Station itself. It's the physical heart, but it's also the biggest source of frustration for millions of people every day. It's the barrier between East and West.
Its notoriety is legendary, and it's entirely down to how it grew. It wasn't planned as one single entity. It just accumulated.
Yeah.
Different railway companies built their lines and stations at different times. JR, Odakyu, Keio, Seibu, plus the subway lines. And they often didn't integrate well at all. It's the definition of a patchwork development.
So if you, listening right now, have ever tried to meet someone, say, at the Odakyu exit when you came in on the JR line, you know the pain. You know the struggle is absolutely real.
Oh, totally. That lack of easy east-west connection, having to navigate through crowded department store basements or confusing underground passages just across the tracks, it's been a headache for decades. The station complex itself, with all the malls spreading out underneath like roots, it's famously bewildering, even for people who've lived in Tokyo for years.
But there's a massive plan to fix this, finally. The Shinjuku Grand Terminal concept.
Yes, it's this huge long-term project. The goal is nothing less than completely rethinking and rebuilding large parts of the station area to finally rationalize passenger flow, upgrade everything, and crucially properly connect the east and west sides. We've already seen the first step with that basic east-west free passage walkway opening up.
And the future plans sound absolutely transformative. Twin towers. A deck over the tracks.
They are city-shaping in scale. The long-term vision, looking out towards the 2040s, includes demolishing and rebuilding the current Odakyu department store and the Luminess building, replacing them with enormous 260-meter twin towers, huge new commercial centers. And yes, the really big idea is constructing a large pedestrian deck over the railway tracks themselves. That would finally, physically and symbolically, bridge the east-west divide that has defined Shinjuku for so long.
It sounds like everything is moving towards becoming bigger, more connected, maybe more rationalized. But Shinjuku always seems to have this tension, doesn't it, between the shiny new developments and this persistent, gritty, sometimes problematic energy. The sleepless city struggles.
That tension is always there. Despite all the redevelopment, Shinjuku remains a place where, less savory elements, including organized crime, are constantly trying to operate. That led to some very significant pushback, most famously the Kabukicho purification operation back in the early 2000s.
Right. That was under Governor Ishihara, a very high-profile crackdown.
It was a really intensive effort targeting organized crime groups, illegal businesses, particularly some foreign-run operations that had become prominent. Hundreds of establishments were shut down, and they massively increased surveillance. That's when all those security cameras started appearing everywhere in Kabukicho, around 2002.
Did it work? Did it purify Kabukicho?
It definitely had an impact. It significantly reduced the overt presence of organized crime and associated violence. But Shinjuku still consistently tops the police statistics for reported crime incidents among Tokyo's wards. The grit, the edge, it's still there, maybe just pushed a bit more into the shadows or manifesting in different ways.
And the sources we looked at highlight some very current, very worrying social issues that are playing out right on the streets at the edges of this maze.
Yeah, these are the contemporary challenges. You have the situation near the Chushu building, the Godzilla building, the area nicknamed Toryoko. This became a gathering spot for the Toryoko kids, Jiyokokitsu.
These are mostly young people, sometimes runaways?
Often, yes. Groups of troubled youth, sometimes underage, congregating there. Many come from difficult home situations. They might be homeless, looking for a sense of community, however precarious. But the area inevitably becomes a magnet for exploitation, drug issues, petty crime, which leads to these recurring large-scale police interventions and crackdowns. It's a very visible symptom of deeper social problems.
And the other issue that's become much more visible recently is street prostitution.
Yes, particularly around Kupo Park near Kabukicho. There's been a noticeable and frankly alarming increase in Tachimbo, women soliciting on the streets. And tragically, studies and reports strongly link a lot of this activity to women trying to pay off enormous debts they've accrued at host clubs.
So it's not just policing the streets, it's trying to tackle the predatory debt cycle that fuels it.
Exactly. The authorities realized they couldn't just arrest the women. It led to intensified police action in 2023 and 2024, but also, crucially, new regulations aimed directly at the host clubs themselves. New rules were brought in to try and cap the amount of sellable debt, basically, limiting these exploitative lending practices that trap vulnerable individuals. It just shows, again, how in Shinjuku, commerce, entertainment, and deep social issues are constantly complexly intertwined, always demanding attention and intervention. #outro.
Wow, what a story. We've gone all the way from Naito Kiyanari's poor, exhausted horse, mapping out this huge swath of future Tokyo, through the Kanto earthquake, basically saving Shinjuku's bacon and turning a forgotten train stop into a powerhouse.
And the incredible irony of Kabukicho, right? Named for this grand cultural vision that completely failed, but whose planners then deliberately built this psychological maze using T-junctions just to keep the energy, the commerce flowing, even without the intended culture.
Plus, Golden Guy, forged in the shadows of the illegal Blue Line era, the ASIN, but then transforming through sheer community spirit into this beloved cultural time capsule where writers and artists hit out and argued and created right under the shadow of the booming city.
Shinjuku's whole story is really modern Japan story in miniature, isn't it?
Yeah.
Constantly adapting to disasters, to economic booms and busts, tearing down and rebuilding, reinventing itself. It's this place where the grimy energy of the black markets, the high-minded ideals of post-war planners, and the cold logic of corporate mega projects all just smash together into this one unbelievably energetic, chaotic core.
So if you found it fascinating, peeling back the layers of this intentional urban maze, a place literally designed to pull you deeper, here's something to think about. Kabukicho started with that idealistic dream of being a cultural center. Now, with this massive Shinjuku Grand Terminal project, aiming to finally streamline and unify the whole station area by the 2040s, will all that planning, all that rationalization, finally smooth out the edges too much? Will it tame the essential gritty, chaotic vitality that was born from centuries of being Tokyo's slightly illicit, always evolving, messy frontier?
They might redesign the physical maze, but that historical, maybe emotional maze, that might be what Shinjuku is all about forever. Definitely worth keeping an eye on. Keep exploring.
Join us next time for another deep dive.